Eruvin Daf Chof Aleph. Today's email comes to us from Yisrael Shalit from Borough Park, another Borough Parker. He says, I watch most of the Siyum on Masechet Shabbos live. All I can say is amazingly wow. You can see the Siyum yourself on YouTube. There's over 3,500 hits. It was out of this world. I've also sent a few people invites to join your shir as well. Thank you, Rabbi Yisrael. I've been learning the daf way before it was in style. I attended shir many years in Borough Park. Be'ezer Hashem, I recently started watching on Zoom after my shir in Borough Park, which finishes around 11 p.m. I'm amazed at how you interact with the Chevra, most of all, how you say you the shir. Fine. But he comes up with a very nice idea. He says that Shas, the way we learn it, doesn't contain all of the Mishnayos. For instance, Masechtas Klayim, etc. He recommends that you grab Mishnayos and learn Mishnayos on the side. You do some Mishnah Berurah Yomi, Yishkoyach Rabbi Yisrael. We're continuing with the sugya of Pasi B'Rois, making El-Shei brackets in the middle of Rishus HaRabim in order to draw water out of a well, which is a Rishus HaYachid, says the Gemara. There's a few conditions. First of all, it's only for a Dvar Mitzvah. For instance, Oile Regalim, people coming to Yerushalayim from out of town and they have animals, or people going from yeshiva to yeshiva for a mitzvah. Another condition is that the water must be ra'ui. It has to be proper water that humans can drink, not filthy water. What about a person himself? A person himself cannot draw water for himself to drink. He's metapes v'ayil metapes v'yared. He goes into the pit itself, drinks the water, then comes out. Unless it's a very wide pit where he wouldn't be able to climb in and out of easily. Rav says in the first lashon that there's a concept called burganim. We know that you cannot walk out of the tchum, you can't go past city limits, 2,000 amma, but if you put huts, burganim, every 70 and 2/3 amma, then you're permitted to go all the way till the last hut. The concept of huts doesn't apply in Bavel, according to the first lashon, but it does apply in all of the rest of the world, including America and Manchester, etc. Why? Because in Bavel they have flash floods and it could take the burganim away and you wouldn't notice. There's no concept of Pasi B'Rois, El-Shei brackets in Chutz La'aretz, but in Bavel there is. Why? Because in Bavel they have yeshivas, Nahardah, Surah, Pumbedisa, etc. Not in America so much, and therefore there's no El-Shei brackets. According to the second lashon in Rav, there's no burganim, there's no Pasi B'Rois, not in Bavel and not in Chutz La'aretz. In Bavel, because of the floods, and in Chutz La'aretz, because of the Ganavim, they'll take your burganim. When it comes to Pasim, in Bavel, there's plenty of water. You can only do Pasi B'Rois when there's a lack of water. And in Chutz La'aretz, there's no yeshivas, like we said before. The Gemara tells us Mari went from Barnash all the way to where Daniel David, which was way more than the Tchum. And Rav Chisda questioned him, and he said, I'm not relying on a burganim because there's no burganim in Bavel. I understand that. I'm relying on the ruins, and ruins do the same job as the huts. David, Eob, and Yecheskel, all three of them spoke about Torah Shebal Peh, how great it is, how wide, how vast, and how much it contains. Yet they didn't explain exactly what until Zechariah ben Idai came and explained. He says, I see a Megillah that's folded over in two. And the size right now is 10 by 20 amas. Now, we're not discussing regular amas. We're discussing the amma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is very, very large, as we'll see in a second. If you open up a 10 by 20, you have a 20 by 20. It's also written on both sides of the parchment. So now if you peel it open, now you have something that's 20 by 40. 20 times 40 equals 800 amas, square amas. This world is only one zeres of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A zeres is a half amma. How many half ammas fit into one square amma? 4. So let's take 4 times 800 equals 3,200. That's how large the Torah Shebal Peh is. It contains that much. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't put it into a sefer. That sefer would be way too much. He gave us a small sefer Torah that contains the Torah She B'chtav. The continuation of the pasuk Yecheskel says, Kinim v'hega v'hi. Kinim is referring to the Puranas that tzaddikim have in this world. Hega is a hint to the sechar that tzaddikim get in Olam Haba. The Gemara tells us that there are shnei dudai ta'idim, the 2 pots of figs. One are amazing figs that are really delicious. That's referring to the tzaddikim. And the really bad ones, the inferior ones that you can't even eat, are the Rishayim. But even the Rishayim eventually will give a nice fragrance after they get their punishments and everything else. Rava says, Hadudayim Nasnu Reach is referring to the Bachur Yisrael, the young boys of Klai Yisrael that never had relations, they never tasted the time of Chet. This is referring to women who tell their husbands about Tumah and they stay faithful to their husbands is another pshat. Chadashim Gam Yishanim, what is the Torah new and old? Says the Gemara, Knesset Yisrael tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's a lot of new gzeiros that we instituted even more than your Torah, and we kept them all. Rav Chisda says that's referring to, as we discussed, Torah Shabbat Peh and Torah Shabbat Ktav. Torah Shabbat Peh, the new halachas that Chachamim, the Gdarim, the Gzeros that came afterwards. Rava says that the pasuk v'yoser mehema b'nei Yizor asay svarim harba. You should make many svarim. What does it mean? It means that if you are over, you don't listen to Chachamim, you're chayiv misa, as Rabbi Yochanan explains, because that's a lacking in Yerushalayim. You say, it's just the Rabbanon. The lag harbe yigias basar says in the pasuk. Rav Papa says lag, even though it's spelled lamed hey gimel, we read it lamed ayin gimel. It means those who make fun of Direi Chachamim, they will get boiling excrements. That will be their Gehenim. Rav says no, it's referring to those who learn Torah, lag, lamed hey gimel, not lamed ayin gimel, and therefore those who learn Torah, biyigia, they will get the tam basar. The Gemara says an amazing story about Rabbi Akiva. It was at the end of his life, he was close to 120 years old, and he was in jail, a terrible place. Every day, Yehoshua, his shamish, would bring him water. One day, the guard decided to spill half of it out. Rabbi Akiva asks, why did you bring me so little water? He told him, he said, okay, I want that water that you gave me to wash Netilas Yadayim. He said, but you won't be able to drink. He said, I'd rather die thirsty than be over on my friend's Gzeira of Netilas Yadayim. And they said a kolchkein, that a younger person, a kolchkein, a person who's not in jail, should be so makbid on the Rabbanon. When Shlomo Melech instituted the concept of Eruvin, with the rights, you could go from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Hayachid to your friend's backyard, but Shlomo said, no, you need an Eruv. He also instituted in Netilas Yadayim before you eat kachim. So a Baskel came out and said, Benim chacham libecha yismach libi gam ani. How smart it was. Knesset Yisrael told Rebbeinu Shalom, don't judge us as if we're the city folk who steal from each other. We're menayef, we swear falsely. Just judge us as if we're those people that are yogeya bat Torah, b'toichat, we don't have money and we still learn Torah. Nirim parcha gefen, says the Gemara, that's referring to people that learn Bali Mikra, they learn the Torah. Pidach HaSmadar is the people that learn Mishnah. And finally, Huneitzim remind him, the pomegranates blossom, that's the biggest level. Those are the people that learn Gemara, perhaps people that learn Daf Yomi, which includes everything, Torah, Mishnah, and Gemara. Shlomo said on every single Dvar Torah, he said, every halach in the Torah, he said 3,000 mishalim, and on every divrei seifrim, every Rabbanan, he explained it with 1,005 pshatim, and he taught it with taimim, trup, the niggin. To start out with, Torah was similar to a basket. They didn't have handles, and Shlomo came, and he was misakin, and he made gzeir, shnis, na'arayis, etc. And it was, Torah became something that you were able to lift up with handles. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.